Hello and welcome to a special Renos Regions, where we take a tour around the world to learn about some of my friends' last names. Since our last show, we've had a Thanksgiving break, where many families gathered to share a bountiful meal, quality time, and family traditions. Every family has a unique story, and I thought it would be wonderful to showcase some of the unique last names that I know. My last name is very uncommon. I've never met another person who is not in my family with my last name, Navales. Navales. And I've had many people mispronounce and misspell it over the years. I've had Navalis, Novalis with the O, Nivalis, and Nobalis. And because my first name is Reno, many people think that my last name is Nevada or some variation. To help people out, I tell them that Navalis is naval-less with one S. My last name comes from my father, who is Filipino, and the name itself is of Spanish origins. There's even a municipality named Navalis in Spain, where some 300,000 people live. Navalis means of or related to a navy, and I like to think that my great-grandfather, when he was tasked by the Spanish government to come up with a last name, he just pointed to the shipyard and asked, "What are those things in the harbor?" They told him, "Those are Navalises," and he ran with it. I'm very proud of my last name and carry it with great pride today, knowing I'm one of only 18,000 in the whole world. And maybe I will be the first with my last name to be famous. I know my grandfather, he's the most famous of them all right now because in my hometown, Navalis Imports, which was in Marina, was known for the best pork buns in the Tri-County area. I hope to one day visit the Philippines and meet some of the other people who do share my last name. Last names to me are very important. These are parts of your identity that you never really think about. People change their first names, they shorten them to nicknames, or they just change them completely. But your last name almost always stays the same unless you get married. And to me, it's just so interesting that you carry around this identifier, and a lot of times you might not know what it means. Some people don't really know the origins, the history. And in learning of my friends' last names, I was reminded about the fight for a better life. Many of their ancestors, like mine, left their countries to start anew, and in doing so gave up the history, the meaning, and even the spellings of their last name. We grow up with these traditional last names and don't even know where or what it means. But maybe that's what our forefathers wanted. They wanted a new life. They wanted a new start. So I implore you, all that are listening, to take some time in the coming year and connect with your family history. You never know. You could be the next heir to a throne. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you for the final shows of Renos Regions ever in the coming weeks.
All right, Reno. Thanks for a fun question. My name's Andrew Kihs. Last name is spelled Kihs. And as far as I know, it's a very uncommon last name. It's easily Googleable. Most things like Ken Island High School. It's definitely not a Smith or a Walker or whatever last names you might have, which is both a gift and a curse, but relatively easy to track back, I believe. So let's start with it. 5 generations ago, we have Theodore Kihs, Kisse, born in 1862. Lots of permutations with my last name here, so I apologize if I'm just running through it. Who had a son named Hermann Gustav Kihs, Kiss, which I'm thankful is not my last name now. I could not stand up to bullies like that, I don't think. He had a son in 1899, Julius Hermann Kihs, spelled Ki with an estat. It's a German letter. It looks almost like a Greek beta. So similar to a B with just like a little downward slope. He moved to America in 1938. And I imagine it went down like this. They were like, okay, Julius Hermann Kihs, you have to change your name because this is a letter we don't even know. We don't even know what this letter is. We don't even know how to say it, write it, blah, blah, blah. You just have to change your name. So they kind of anglicized it to something, the thing that it is now, Kihs. And the pronunciation has become a little bit more lax, I think, throughout generations. Where, I mean, if you ask my grandpa, he'd probably be like, Kihs. But, you know, you can call me Andrew Kihs. You know, I'm not a big stickler. There are a couple people on Facebook who share the last name. And I think it might be just out of pure coincidence in terms of people having this German last name, the same German last name, and then it becoming anglicized. So I think that might be kind of an example of that, but you never know. As far as I know, my last name goes back and has had many permutations before even coming to the United States. And then finally kind of rests on me with the last person to potentially carry on my family name, which does and does not keep me up at night. I mean, I would say most of the time it does not. I don't think it ever has, really. But thank you for the question, Reno. That's the story that's fit to print, or at least go on the radio, I suppose. Thanks.
My name is Erin Eurbanks, and my last name, Eurbanks, it's not crazy common. If I had to slap an estimate on there, I would say like roughly 20,424 people have the same one. But that's like, I'm just throwing numbers out there. I'm just kidding. I got that from like a last name calculator. But this sounds pretty accurate to me. I haven't met that many people yet with that last name, but I feel like pretty soon I will. So the last name started out singular, just Eubank, just one little tiny Eubank, and it came from 12th century England. And then some guy came over to the US and he said, "New country, new me," and slapped that S on there. Eubanks. And respect for him, because I think it sounds a lot better that way. The name means someone who lives nearby a yew tree, a Y-E-W tree. That's not very accurate anymore. I live by oak trees. I've considered changing my name to Oakbanks, but I don't know. It doesn't really have the same ring, and my parents aren't ecstatic about that. So I probably won't do that. But in general, I would say people mostly get my name right. Sometimes I'll get Eubanks, like Eubanks, spooky. Or I'll get like Eurbanks, like EW Banks. Like, hey man, I don't know what I did to you, calm down. Or sometimes I'll get like just spelled with a U. Because normally it's spelled EU Banks, but sometimes I'll just Eubanks. I kind of like that too. That's about it for my last name. It's a very brief history of Eubanks.
Hi, my name is Sara Patz. It's spelled P-A-T-Z, so it's often mispronounced as Patz. It makes sense to pronounce it like Patz. It is a German name. When my family came through Ellis Island long time ago, it used to have an umlaut over it, so it was P-A umlaut with A-T-Z. But when we were going through Ellis Island, they tried to Americanize a lot of last names. So they dropped the umlaut and put an A and an E, so P-A-E-T-Z. And so then that still looked like Patz. But during World War II, no one really liked the Germans. And the A and the E together was a very typical German last name, or like word letter combo. So the E was dropped during World War II. And so that's why it's P-A-T-Z, but it's pronounced Patz. It's fairly uncommon. I've only met like one other person ever who wasn't like an extended part of our family.
My last name is Kaniewski, but the Polish pronunciation is Kaniewski. The rest of my extended family uses that traditional pronunciation, but for some reason I'm just not sure of. My dad always just used the American version, Kaniewski. A lot of Slavic names end in ski because it means from, basically. So the name means my family was probably from a place called Kniev or Knievo. And as a kid, I never really thought about it. I just knew that my name was hard to spell when it came to writing my name on assignments in kindergarten. But nowadays, I really like my last name. I feel proud of it because it's a connection to where my family's from. My dad and his sisters were born in the US but moved back to Poland as toddlers, and they grew up there during the communist era up until the 80s. And so growing up, I was exposed to a lot of the culture, especially at family gatherings. Polish was all people spoke and all the food was Polish. But other than that, I don't have much real personal connection to the culture. Those reasons being, I never learned the language myself, so I could hardly communicate with my grandparents, and I only ever got to go to Poland and visit some family for the first time last year, when I was 21. So my family's pretty American at this point. I mean, we've been here for almost over 4 decades. The only real connections I have to that side of myself anymore is if I visit my grandparents or when I make borscht for my friends, and my last name. It's always really fun when someone hears a ski at the end and starts asking if I'm Polish and then listing off all the Polish people they know. And some people will even pronounce it the traditional Polish way right off the bat, and that's really surprising but fun. A lot of times though, people will mispronounce it in funny ways like Kaniewski, which never made sense to me, but I'm sure I've mispronounced people's names plenty of times before too. I really love last names because they can tell a story about someone and where they're from, and I feel like mine does that too. Even if people mispronounce it a lot, I'm really proud of it, and I love it.
So, my name is Joseph Gordis. My first name, Joseph. That's an easy one. It's from the Bible. It's maybe the most common name of all. Nothing really special about it. But my last name, Gordis, is very rare. There's only 121 people in the world with that last name. 77 of them are in America, and then the next most common place of occurrence is Israel, with another 9 of them over there. And I know for a fact I'm related to like 3 of them over there. It makes sense because get the last name from my dad's side of the family, and they're all Jews. I know, why that is. I don't know, what the origin of that word Gordis is, or even what it's like. I don't know its meaning or its country of origin. I've asked around my family members, and none of them really know. It's kind of a interesting mystery that I'm still trying to figure out. Could be Greek, it could be Lithuanian. Those, that's what they think. Yeah, it's kind of up in the air as to what it could be. The only thing I know for sure, and has nothing to do with my heritage, is that it means chubby in Spanish. Like if you have a chubby baby, you call it like Gordis, and you pinch its cheeks and things like that. So that's a lot of fun.
Hi, my name is Doreen Leah Blumenfeld, and it's my name means a lot to me, and it's not just my last name, but my entire name means a lot to me and has a lot of my family history in it. My name Doreen, first name, comes from a French word that means child of God, and it was derived from my maternal grandmother's, whose name was Dora. Leah is a name that was in the Bible a lot, and it's also was the name of my paternal great aunt Leah, who raised my father for a number of years when he was just a very young child, and his mother had died in the flu epidemic of 1918 in San Francisco. And my last name Blumenfeld is of Eastern European and German heritage. It's a combination of Yiddish, which was spoken in Eastern Europe and Germany, and some German words, and it basically means a field of blooming flowers. And it was used to evoke a pleasant vision of blooming flowers. Sometimes my last name Blumenfeld is mispronounced or misspelled. Most frequently, it's blooming, BLOOMING, that people mistake when it should be BLUMENFELD. And also people frequently have mistaken it for the name Blumenthal, which was a person that was involved in national politics during the Obama administration, I believe. I've never changed my name. In fact, I've chosen not to change my name when I got married to a very nice man with the last name of Angel. And somehow I really like my last name of Blumenfeld, and feel really happy to have it. It feels like a good grounding for me and a nice balance. And it's mine. And I love the sense of connection it gives me with all my ancestors. So thanks for asking me to participate in this. And I wish everyone well that is listening to this broadcast. Bye and stay well.
Hi everyone, my name's Ashlyn Massimo. I'm really glad that my friend and neighbor Reno invited me to talk about my last name. He brought it to my attention that I'm one of 43 people in the entire world who has the last name Massimo. So this was super intriguing to me, so I started doing a little bit of research, and I figured out that out of those 43 people, 31 of the Massimos live in the US, 10 on the Ivory Coast, 1 in Belarus, and 1 in Russia. So it says that Massimo has Russian origin, which was surprising to me because I have always been told that Massimo is an Italian name. So this was all the insight that I gained from my online research, and I refused to do a free trial on Ancestry.com because I'm horrible at canceling free trials. So I talked to my father, who led me to talk to my grandfather to get some more information about how the last name came to be. And it turns out that there is a cute story behind it. So once upon a time, my great-grandfather, Joseph Massimo, was applying for a driver's license in Philadelphia. He was only 13 years old, but he really needed this license to provide for himself and his family. So, as I said, his last name was Massimo. So when he ended up passing the test, they were making his physical license, and the person at the DPS misspelled it to Massimo. So the A was switched out for an I. He didn't realize this until he had already gotten home, and he didn't want to risk potentially having his license taken away if he was to try to correct it. So he just kind of went along with it. So after that, he started driving taxis until eventually he had his own taxi business, and he drove them for the rest of his life. So that's how Massimo came. As for the name Massimo, that is an Italian surname. And whenever you look up Massimo, there's way more Massimos in the world. And this comes from another Italian name, Massimbeni, which means good heart. So yeah, so that little switch up kind of explains why there's so few Massimos and how most of them are all concentrated in the US because it was so relatively new. So that's the legend of Massimo.
Hi, my name is Clayton Faries. While my last name is pronounced Faris, like Ferris wheel or Ferris Bueller, my last name is actually spelled Faries. And most people do mispronounce it by saying either Faries or Faries, which is totally understandable due to the spelling. And I have an uncle who is really into our family's heritage, and he even started a website years ago called Faris Genealogy, and he hasn't kept up with it for a few years, but I found out from him that the Faris last name is Irish, and he told me that in the late 1840s there were 2 brothers with the last name Faris that immigrated to the United States from Ireland, specifically with the exact same spelling of my last name. And if you look at the date of which these Faris brothers came over here, it's almost certain that the Irish potato famine was the reason for their immigration from Ireland. And I've always thought it was really interesting, but also really weird, that if the horrible and tragic Irish potato famine never happened, there's a chance that the Faris name, or at least Faris with my spelling, never would have came to the United States. And if that was the case, I would not be here talking on Renos Regions today. And I've never met anyone with the last name Faris, not even with a different spelling than mine, So maybe that's pretty cool. So maybe I do take a little pride in it, especially since my entire name, first, middle, and last, has been passed down subsequent generations from my great-grandfather, making me number 4. And I've even got a little Roman numeral, like an IV, next to my name, so that's pretty cool. And hopefully I'll have a son who is Clayton Faries number 5. To the original Faries brothers, I'm really sorry the Irish potato famine happened, but thank you for coming to the United States.
Here is the story of my last name. My last name is Stack. It is derived from the last name Plostok, which is of Russian and Hebrew origin. Great-grandparents had their last name changed to something that was perhaps more Americanized, as many immigrant families did when they arrived at Ellis Island. It's interesting to think about maybe what it might mean. I don't know. A few guesses include an interest in placing objects in ascending or descending order to create what is considered a stack, or that's about it, actually. So that's interesting to think about. My name has not changed. It has remained the same since I was born. I've never visited my homeland. I've never sought out the opportunity to do so, but perhaps that's something to consider in the future. My father is relatively far removed from the religious background of his heritage, so it's never been much of a pursuit of our family to unearth the story of our name and our lineage, but it nonetheless exists. Is it common? Not really. The only other time I've encountered a stack was in the cast listing of Airplane the movie. There's a man named Robert Stack in that movie, and I cannot recall immediately what role this man plays, but I do remember it being something of importance, and him being one of the white-haired old men, of which there are many in that particular movie. How do people mispronounce it? That's a great question. Most people don't, but my first name often gets some trouble. I've heard Even, Evan, even a little bit of a bend on the Evan, but it is just Evan. However, first names, where do people guess it's from? It's a great question. It has a sort of firmness of perhaps the German language. I don't believe it is of those origins, at least not to my recollection. But I've never really received a great mixture of possibilities. That's something to perhaps pose to friends and family later on, and then further investigate. At the moment, I will stick with that answer. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure being able to talk about my last name.
Hello, my name is Noah Obstfeld. I had to think about it there. The correct pronunciation is, in German, is Obstfeld, but, you know, in American English we say Noah Obstfeld. A lot of people say Obstfeld as well. Really, either works. So, what it means in German is fruit field. Obst is fruit, Feld is field. It came from my dad's side, obviously. My family is not German. I'm not really too sure the origin of the name. My family is Polish, Austrian, Russian, and Lithuanian. It's very uncommon. There's, I think, my dad is a professor. There's ironically a pretty famous professor named Obstfeld. There's one economist, but all in all, a very pretty rare name. I've gotten like a few random Facebook and Instagram requests from people who share the name from weird places in the world. One story my dad has that's pretty, sad story is when he was in Poland maybe 30 years ago. and he went to a small town that he knew we had ancestry from, and asked to see the directory. And they like gave him basically the pre-World War II directory, and the famous quote from my dad is, "There's pages and pages and pages of Obstfelds who most likely all were perished in the Holocaust." So part of the reason that it could be a more rare name, unfortunately, but yeah, it's a fun one. There's a lot of Smiths and Williams out there, and I'm glad I have something a little more unique. It's a conversation starter. People definitely. The famous line is also, "Can I buy a vowel?" Because it's O and then B, 1 consonant, S, 2 consonants, T, 3 consonants, F, 4 consonants in a row, ding, 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 ELD. So, people would generally pronounce it correctly because it sounds exactly how it looks. But it's definitely, like I said, a conversation starter and a fun little thing. Additionally, my first and last name initials is No, which is fun. I waited my whole life for the opportunity for someone to ask me my first and last name initials and for me to say no. It's happened once. I'm hoping that it happens again. I had to explain them that I was waiting for that my whole life. Fun times. But yeah, anyways, that's the history of Obstfeld. My first name, pretty basic Jewish boy name. It means, ironically, peace and quiet, which I think my parents missed the target there. But maybe I provide peace and quiet, or peace at least, through my person. So, however you want to interpret that, it's up to you. Every now and then a German person will recognize it and be, Fruitfield, Obstfeld. That's German, they say. And I say, yes, that is German. I don't think the name has changed. And yeah, thanks, Reno. Hope you have an excellent show today.
When asked about last names, my friend Wyatt Slate gave me the origins of his last name. His grandfather, Robert Perham, became an actor as an adult and had his name legally changed to Jeremy Slate when registering with the Screen Actors Guild. He chose Slate for the significance of slate boards and cinema productions. Has not changed at all in the time that he's had the last name. It's interesting that his last name, Perham, is a very rare last name, and in itself, only a couple thousand people have that last name. Thank you, Wyatt, for writing in your answers.
Hi, my name is Gaytan, Gaytan, and yes, it's pretty uncommon. I haven't met any other person besides my family having this last name. And a funny story is that even people inside of my family have it written differently. So it's either Gaytan, which is what I have, or some of my relatives would have Gaitan. So it's a little weird that not even people in my family have it correct or even know for sure. The origin is, I believe, Mediterranean, Italian. It's like around that area. It's supposed to mean, or it says it means, from the gates or from the coast. I used to say Gaytan just to make it easier for people, because when you see my last name, it just seems easier to say Gaytan because it just literally says gay and then tan. But it hasn't been up to recently where I've been correcting people to say Gaytan, and even then it's still a challenge, but which I don't mind. When people guess where it's from, it's a myriad of answers. I've gotten from the Philippines, I have gotten Lebanon, I have gotten Mexico, Argentinian, and I'm just a little girl from Dallas. But I do take pride in my last name, and I'm pretty happy that's an uncommon last name.